welcome everyone to another one of our guest speaking events. Tonight we're fortunate enough to have Millie with us. Millie is a future pupil barrister at Park Squares in Leeds, and she'll be starting her common law pupilage next September. So she's here to tell you a little bit about that. And these events are really designed for you guys to get an insight into life at the bar, the process to joining. And I'm sure Millie's going to agree that there's absolutely no stupid questions. So please do feel free to pop any questions into the chat or ask them at the end during the Q&A session. And over to you, Millie.
Great. Well, firstly, thank you for having me. So I'll start with a little bit about my journey to pupilage. So I applied for pupilage last year in my third and final year of my law degree at Leeds Uni. And I had heard how competitive the pupilage process is, and I sort of thought I had nothing to lose by applying as early as I can. And obviously I'm really glad I did so now because I was fortunate enough to be successful. So I sent off 5 pupilage applications in total, which from what I've heard is actually not very many. I was kind of using it as a bit of a dummy run, sort of dip my feet in the waters because I was so young and it was my first application cycle. So I didn't want to go crazy, and I was trying to balance.
This video is sponsored by Lexstery, the first free online community for aspiring lawyers pursuing a legal career in England and Wales. Inside the community, you will gain access to our courses, legal career consulting programs, forum, free resources, and live events, which we run every month, covering a range of topics, including legal applications, legal interviews, advocacy events, and we host guest speakers from across the legal profession who share their tips and tricks on how to secure a training contract and pupilage. You can sign up for free at lexstery.com, and we look forward to welcoming you inside our legal community.
My applications alongside the final year of my law degree. So I was conscious that my priority was my finals, and that I didn't want it to affect that too much. So I felt that 5 was sort of a manageable amount of applications for me to send off. And I was lucky enough to get 2 first round interviews and then 1 final round interview, which got me pupilage at Park Square Barristers. So yeah, that was great. I picked Park Square, I think, well, all of the ones that I applied to, I picked really for 2 main reasons. Like the first thing, I wanted to practice on the Northern Circuit, specifically in Leeds, but definitely somewhere up north. And secondly, I knew sort of from mini-pupilage experiences that I've had that civil law was the area that interested me most. So my sort of 2 criteria were civil and in the north, and Park Square and the other 4 that I applied to were sort of the few that I found that meet both of those criteria. So that was how I narrowed it down.
I was just going to jump in and say, I met Millie on a very coincidental. Can you hear me? Yeah. So me and Millie met because I was giving a presentation last week at Leeds University, and she was actually very modest because she sat through the entire talk, and only after I'd left the talk did the organizer of the event tell me, "Oh, she's got pupilage, by the way." She didn't say anything. You didn't say anything the entire time, and that's how we met. And she's kindly offered to come today. So, knowing just what you've said then, and like hearing your journey to getting pupilage, going to a common law set, there's loads of questions I have for you. I'm sure the audience have loads for you as well. But I have kind of, I want to just kind of go back to the very beginning, before you applied for pupilage. I know you touched on that you're from Leeds University, and that it was after really your 3rd year you went on to do the bar course, and you applied during the bar course. But prior to that, what was did you always know it was law from the beginning? Like, did you go from A level saying, all right, I'm going to go into law? Was there any kind of uncertainty in the beginning? And if I can delve into a little bit as well, were you, how was your academic journey grades wise from the beginning?
Yeah, so I've sort of always known that that I wanted to have a career in law. And I've known from quite early on that I was leaning towards the barrister route as opposed to the solicitor route. So I sort of have always known about that, even probably from GCSE level onwards, definitely at A level. I sort of remember like I tailored all my uni applications towards wanting to be a barrister.
So this is interesting, right? Because this is where I want to jump in. Is for the statistics, statistically, you're the anomaly. You're the rarity of candidates that the very special few will get pupillage on the first run. But what's interesting that you've just said there is that actually for you, it sounds like you knew from a very long time ago that kind of you wanted to be a barrister. So I think it's interesting for people to know that I would imagine, having known from a long time ago, that even if subconsciously you were already kind of taking steps towards it. And I think it's helpful for people to know, because some people listen to this may get to the end of uni and say, oh, I want to be a barrister. And then for them, that process is beginning at that stage. So I think it's useful to kind of hear that it wasn't, although you got it in the first round, it's been a long time coming. I'm going to swap camera because I appreciate my camera's playing up a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do think that helped because I knew sort of early on, even from first year of uni, I was sort of really proactive from the get-go to try and build my CV and get as much experience as I can to help me stand out and be a really valuable candidate.
And was that from first year? Did that process start from first year?
Yeah, I think I started applying for mini-pupilages in first year, doing pro bono work, volunteering, things like that. Definitely looking into everything. And then second year, I really hit the ground running. So I think that helped. And another reason you mentioned earlier that I didn't mention about my pupillage at the university event, because I am aware how hard it is to get pupillage, and I am aware that it's like I'm extremely lucky to have got it first time round and in my final year of uni being so young. And I don't want people to think that that's the norm and that you know they should expect that that's what's going to happen. I'm fully aware of how competitive the process is, and as a uni student it is quite overwhelming. So I was sort of conscious in that environment that I was surrounded by a load of uni students who, as I was feeling in their position, were probably feeling quite overwhelmed by the whole process. And I didn't want to sort of fly in and be like, yeah, it's easy, I got it first time round in final year. But yeah, I definitely think what you say, the fact that I knew it early on really did help me.
I think it's like, it's very modest of you, but I also think, like, I understand obviously it's not one of those things that you would go into a room and say, oh, you know, first time round, but at the end of the day you did get it first time round, and there's actually a lot of value. Like, people, I remember when in my cohort, when there were one or two people who'd got it first time round, everyone was flocking to them because they were like the oracles of knowledge that had so much like just experience to share. And yeah, I think it's kind of, it makes it for an interesting route. And I think when you're making moves in first year, like, I'm interested to hear, like, what you said you were doing, like applying for minis and things. Like, where was the guidance coming from at that stage? Like, how maybe you knew about mini pupilages, but like, how were you knowing where to apply? How did you even go about drafting that first mini pupilage cover letter at what would have been such a young age, where you're 18 or 19 years old?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it feels so long ago now, but I guess just kind of research. And actually, I was telling my my housemate the other day that I remembered my first tutor meeting in first year with my personal tutor, and he was sort of asking me, you know, what are you thinking career-wise? And I said barrister, and he almost appeared to try and like put me off it a bit, saying, "Oh, are you sure? You know, it's a really competitive thing. Maybe you should like consider other things." And then contrast that with my last tutor meeting where I told him, "Oh yeah, I got pupillage starting in 2025." It was great to be able to go in and say that to him. But I think people do like try and discourage you a little bit because they're almost scared of the competition. But I think if it's what you want, you just have to go for it. But I think first year wise, because I already knew, I just did loads of research. So I was just starting to look online at different chambers, different areas of specialism, because I don't have any like legal professionals in my family or anything like that. So I really was sort of starting from square one in that sense as well, that I was on my own.
You're a first generation lawyer.
Yeah, trying to work it out for myself.
Yeah.
And I do think, the barristers aren't spoken about as much as solicitors are, at least at Leeds University. I found that it was very solicitor heavy, and they didn't really, a lot of my friends didn't even know what barristers were or what they did, which I thought was crazy considering that they're law students. But people just don't know because it's just not spoken about in the same way.
It's got much less of a push, I think. Much less of. Do you remember like the first place you got a mini, and what was that? Just like, were there applications in the graveyard before that one came through, or?
Yeah, definitely. I think it is a numbers game. I remember I'd kind of separated. I actually really nerdy, but I made an Excel spreadsheet of all of the chambers, what areas they specialised in. I split them up into categories, whether their applications were a CV and a cover letter, or whether they were an application form. And all the CV cover letter ones, I sort of made sure my CV was as good as it could be, which is hard as a first year when you haven't got any experience.
Definitely, that's why it's so surprising as well. Because that's what makes it such a very good accomplishment in first year, where you don't have any experience really. That's when it's such a craftsmanship to get it through.
It's sort of the vicious cycle of, you want to get experience, but to get experience you need experience, and it's the vicious cycle of that. But I think I leaned heavily on my A levels in a lot of my very first applications, because quite roguely for a law student I did maths, chemistry and business A level, so very sort of maths and scientific, not really, some people would say, very linked to law. But I sort of spun that on I'm particularly interested in like medical negligence law and sort of those areas of law which do require more scientific knowledge. So I spoke about my A levels a lot and how that sort of set me out from a lot of other candidates who probably did the classic sort of essay style A levels. And I did get 3 A stars in my A levels as well, and I got all 8s and 9s GCSE. So I do think those helped. And even at school, I sort of had a relatively good CV. Like, I was head girl at school. I was like house captain for my house in like lower school, just little things like that I'd sort of picked up along the way that I could add to my CV. I definitely think those helped.
Well, like you, before I pivoted to law, all my CV was science, and like most of the students I speak with tend to feel like if they didn't do English or law at A level, then can they still do it at that kind of stage? Like, is it too late to pivot? Because rarely you hear someone actually articulate, well, I actually did business X, Y, and Z, and then I use those to connect them to negligence and make a case why it's relevant. So I think it's interesting to hear, because it is normally the average criteria or characteristics of a law student do certain types of topics at A level. So I think it's encouraging for people to not feel like they're kind of trapped in a box if they haven't done the status quo A levels. So you get your first mini pupilage. Was it like 3-5 days?
3, I think. It was at Enterprise Chambers in Leeds. It was a commercial one. And I do remember feeling very out of my depth. I remember sort of at the end, he asked me to like, throughout the week I was sort of drafting my own skeleton argument, and then at the end he was like, okay, pretend I'm the judge and deliver it to me. And I was like, what? I have no idea what I'm doing. I'd never moved to this point, and I sort of couldn't believe that I'd been asked to do that. A shockingly bad attempt. And then he kind of stopped me halfway through and was like, okay, that's fine, we'll leave it there.
Proper thrown into the deep end.
It really was. I didn't think he quite realised like how little experience that I had. But I think it is just a numbers game with minis. Like I probably did apply to maybe 30, and in total, I think I've done around 10 in total, but a couple of those weren't from applying. Like Leeds Uni does like a voluntary school mooting competition where like a few uni students will team up with sixth form students from schools in the local area, and a few barristers from local chambers will be allocated to each team as well. And you basically coach the sixth form students how to moot, and then the finalists get to moot at the magistrates court in front of an actual judge. And my team made it through to the final. So the barristers that were in my team offered me a mini pupilage as part of that.
Right, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, like, and little extra things like that, you can sort of pick up minis. I was also at a dinner once, and where I just happened to be sat next to, this was at my Inn of Court, sorry, at Lincoln's Inn, and I was sat next to a barrister who was head of chambers in one of the local chambers in Lincoln's Fields, and he just gave me his business card, and I just sent him an email after saying, great to meet you, any chance I could shadow you? And he said yeah. So I think it's sort of, if you don't ask, you don't get in some of those situations. You do have to be a bit cheeky, and it doesn't feel natural all the time to follow people up. But when they give you their business card or give you their contact details and say, feel free to get in touch, definitely take people up on those offers, because that got me a mini as well.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like there's such an art to networking, because it's like having the awareness of someone gives you a card, they've opened the door. But then there is a line between recognizing when someone doesn't want further contact, and that's a very subtle thing, but it does exist. And you know, it's kind of knowing when either they're too busy, they don't have the time, and even if they don't have the time and you're committed to the networking goal with them, about warming them up rather than asking for something from the outset, just kind of giving it a bit of breathing room, giving it maybe 3 or 4 months of just general chit chat, or just having your face in their orbit on the occasion before you ask. Because I think when I started, I had just been very forward with asking for things sometimes, and sometimes too much, because I wasn't getting the cues of, you know, it's they're not interested basically. So
it's a fine line, but
yeah. I was going to ask, so you get your, I had a look, and I think I mentioned this to you last time. You won I think it's the BPP Advocacy Scholarship Award.
Yeah.
So how do you end up, because that's a very difficult award to get, because you're against loads of people on entry, really. It's an entrance level scholarship, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think there is more than one available, though I'm not sure entirely the amount, but it's just part of the application process. They've got a variety of different scholarships that they offer, and for that, all I had to do was send in a 5-minute plea and mitigation video, and it was just based purely on that 5-minute video. So
what can someone like do to prepare for that? Like, is it a case of trying to do as much advocacy events at uni as possible? Like, when you went to it, were you quite comfortable with your advocacy?
Yeah, I think so. So obviously, like, mooting is probably the obvious one. I think most law societies or universities will have some sort of mooting competition, whether it's internal or external, but anything sort of along those lines I think is great to get involved with, just to build your confidence up. I mean, I didn't actually start mooting with my uni society until final year, and in hindsight I probably should have done it a bit earlier, but I was sort of focused on other things in my first and second year, and you know, you can't do everything, but I think mooting is a great place to start. And then every year BPP do an Advocate of the Year mock trial competition. So I got involved in that, and my team, you're in teams of 2 per university, and me and my teammate won the regional competition. And then I personally, like, based off my performance, got nominated to go to the final, which was at the Old Bailey in London as well, which was a great experience.
Cool. Yeah, I was gonna say, that's really cool.
And yeah, so I think that helped a lot as well, advocacy wise. So it's not just mooting, you know, there's mock trials and other forms of advocacy as well, you know, negotiating, debating, things like that.
For the uninitiated, what is a common law pupillage? What is common law, like, in that realm? For people who aren't familiar, like, what is that type of law, that type of set?
Yeah, so off my understanding, it's sort of a mixture of everything really. It's sort of a set that does a variety of different practice areas. I mean, I guess common law traditionally is more like chancery based, but most common law pupillages now offer, and this is one thing that appealed to me about Park Squares, is that whilst they offer you the opportunity to sort of dip into different areas of law, they offer flexibility to tailor it towards you and your specific interests. So I told them in my application and in my interview sort of the area of law that I'm particularly interested in, which is civil, and specifically personal injury, clinical negligence and employment. So they sort of allow the common law pupillage to be tailored towards those areas of law. But I just think common law pupillages in general are great for giving you the flexibility, especially as I am still quite young. I'm not 100% sure. I know which areas of law I'm interested in, but I'm not 100% sure about one really niche area that I want to specialize in. So I just thought it would give me the opportunity to sort of see lots of different types of law before committing.
And this is a question I'm not really sure of in terms of the answer. If, for example, you did a common law pupillage and you wanted to go commercial down the line, is it, for example, if you do a criminal pupillage and you want to go commercial, that's a big, that's a big pivot. That's almost starting from the bottom again. With, albeit you've got the advocacy skills that you've gained from being in that world, in terms technically, you need to start again. So how is it for common law, people who do common law pupillages? Is it still using civil procedure rules? Is it less of a gap, would you say, to cross that bridge?
What, from criminal to civil?
From civil to commercial?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, well, I kind of see it, and I've even explained in interviews when people sort of ask me why I'm interested in civil. I see it as a bit of a spectrum, with criminal on one end and commercial on the other, and civil sort of in the middle, having traits of both. So as I understand it, criminal is very court based. Almost every day criminal barristers are in court. It's very like people based as well, and very advocacy heavy. Whereas commercial, I sort of see as a lot more written work. Not commercial barristers aren't in court as much as criminal barristers are, and it's sort of less face-to-face contact, more work behind the scenes. And then civil, sort of in the middle, in my opinion, you get the perfect mixture of both. You're in court a fair amount, but you're also, it's not every single day. You've got sort of paperwork to do alongside it. I know there's paperwork in criminal as well, but more sort of drafting outside of court. So that's sort of why why civil was specifically what enticed me. But I suppose you could, I suppose it is closer to commercial than criminal is. And I guess it depends on the set as well. When I was looking at pupillages, a lot of commercial sets were very specialised and offered specifically just a commercial pupillage rather than a common law pupillage. I don't know if Park Square does commercial, or if they do, then it's not sort of one of their main areas of specialism. So I don't know if it really applies to me. I know Park Square does criminal, family, and a lot of areas of civil, but I'm not 100% sure about commercial.
Oh, it's a good way of looking at it, and because it is very true, like, on the spectrum essentially, between court and then behind the scenes work, and then kind of having a middle ground. There's a question here. I think you've answered the first one, which is how many pupillages did you do, and that's from Jordan. And I think you said 10.
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but it's around 10. Yeah, I think it's 10.
And then we have a question from Ben, who said, how soon after your common law pupillage ends are you allowed at PSQB to start to specialise? And then I think he goes on to say that he's interested in a particular common law set, doesn't allow you to specialize for 3 years. You have to keep a broad practice until that time. So I think he's asking, are you set in?
Yeah, the honest answer to that question is I'm not sure. I don't start my pupillage until next September. So sort of just under a year away still. So I haven't actually sort of received any finite details. The only details that I do know is sort of the areas that they specialised in, and they offered a family pupillage or a common law pupillage, and I'm not particularly interested in family, so the common law pupillage suited me better for civil. I haven't heard any strict rules about not being able to specialise for however long. I mean, I'm not particularly interested in crime, but I do believe that as a common law pupil, I probably will have to pick up sort of magistrate's work. From what I've gathered, that's sort of inevitable for a junior barrister on a common law pupillage. But I'm hoping.
Did you say, is that picking up criminal work?
Yeah. But I'm hoping to steer away from that as I progress. I don't know, I might really enjoy it, but from what I've experienced on minis, civil is where I most prefer. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure about that question. So it will be interesting to see sort of how my practice develops.
Of the 10 that you did, you don't need to name them, but are you able to give us can you give us a flavor of two things? Did the quality of the sets increase in terms of, like, did you start out applying mini-pupilages for, like, I don't want to say low level sets, but you see what I mean in terms of, like, as you started to rack up the numbers, did the door open to higher, more prestigious sets? And then the follow-up question to that is, out of those 10, how many were common law mini-pupilages?
Yeah, I'll start with the second question first. Not actually that many. So I did used to think that I wanted to be a commercial barrister from my business A-level background. So I sort of tailored a lot of my initial applications towards commercial. So I did one in London, I believe 4 Stone Buildings. This was quite a while ago because it was one of my first, but I think it was 4 Stone Buildings. It was in Lincoln's Inn. And obviously Enterprise, I already said that was my very first one. Those two were within a few months of each other, and they were both commercial. And I did enjoy them, but I think it just sort of made me realise that perhaps I'd want to be in court and do a bit more advocacy than commercial requires, and have more sort of be able to use my interpersonal skills a bit more. I know obviously companies are people behind the scenes, but in my head it just seems like it's more rewarding to be able to help a person, an individual, as opposed to a company.
Yeah, no, and I think that's kind of the beauty of the job as well, because the job isn't just court, it isn't just papers, it isn't just it's kind of trying to get a nice mix of the three. So of the 10 then, they were predominantly commercial. Would you say that doesn't make a difference to whether, like, do common law chambers want to see common law minis, or are they okay seeing a common law mini or a commercial mini? Obviously, if you, for example, you had 8 criminal minis, they'd probably be a bit like, but are they less fussed about whether it's common law or commercial, as long as it's in that realm?
It's a hard question to answer, because when I was applying to minis, I didn't really have in mind that I was doing them to support my pupillage application. Because I started so early with minis, pupillage just seemed like a million miles away. I was more doing it for my own benefit, to sort of see what the day-to-day life of the different areas of law actually look like. And like I say, it sort of changed my mind. I used to want to do commercial, and then having seen the reality, I sort of switched away from that. So for me, it was more for the personal benefit of seeing the day-to-day life of each specialism. But I would say I found criminal mini-pupilages the easiest to get, again, just because of the nature of the work. So I actually did 2 minis at Park Square. It was the only set that I did 2 minis at. But I initially applied. They weren't, even though they offer a common law pupillage, mini-pupillage wise, they didn't offer a common law one. So I just initially applied for a civil mini-pupillage. And when I turned up, they were like, really sorry, but we've sort of not got any civil work on in court today. If you're shadowing a civil barrister, you're probably just going to be sat in their office with them while they're doing paperwork. It won't be the most interesting experience for you. How would you feel about shadowing a criminal barrister instead? So obviously, I said, yeah, that's great. I'd love to sit in court and see criminal proceedings. So it was meant to be a civil mini pupilage, but turned criminal for my first one. And then I actually emailed after saying, or I think maybe they even approached me and said, we're happy to offer you another mini pupilage when we've got more civil work in. So then I went back and did another one, which was civil, and I got to see some civil work as well. So common law mini pupilage wise, I didn't actually see the chance to apply to many. Most mini pupilages were quite specialised in my experience. Even some more specialised than just generic civil law. Some were like specifically employment or things like that. But yeah, I think especially early on, it's just good to get a flavour of a variety of different specialisms to help you narrow it down.
Definitely. After you've kind of got the minis under your belt and you know exactly where you want to go and what it is that you want to do, you were like, before you got into doing the course that you're on now, I'm conscious that you're a fellow Lincoln's Inn member and scholar. How, because you must have applied for the scholarship, you're more recent than me, so I think it'd be interesting to hear like, what is it now, because it may have changed from when I applied. Is it still the same process, i.e. submit an application and then you're shortlisted? If you're shortlisted, you're given an interview, and then if you're given an interview, it's an hour interview and you're asked a series of questions with an advocacy exercise. Is that the gist of it?
No, actually, it's the same until interview stage, but my interview was only 15 minutes long, I think. I had to prepare a presentation about an area of law that I wanted to change, or I think a case that was wrongly decided, something along those lines. I remember I based it off my dissertation.
Were you given it in advance or on the day?
In advance, we could prepare this.
Right.
When we found out that we had been successful and we'd got an interview, then they told us in advance, can you prepare this? So
just to qualify that, they're not telling you, because when I did it, I got told, I'm pretty certain I got told in the waiting room, here's a piece of paper, this is what you're going to do. Were you emailed before the day, or when you say in advance, is it while you're in the waiting room?
No, like way in advance. Like
right, okay.
So I don't know, maybe I think in early February, I think we found out that we had got our paper applications were successful and we were through to the interview stage. And I think it was at that point, it was definitely at least a month in advance, or it was a fair while in advance. We had time to prepare a 5-minute presentation on that, and then they would ask you questions on it at the end. So I think you've got to really do something that you know about, because they will grill you on it at the end. So
once you finish you didn't finish the scholarship process. Mm-hmm. I know for a lot of people it's scholarship or bust. You either get the money, or many people, me included, you can't do it without unless you haven't done a master's, and then you're able to use the 10 grand, but then you're still in a 10 grand deficit to get money from somewhere.
No, that was exactly the situation that I was in. So I sort of, again, applied as early as I could in my final year of uni for the scholarship, sort of with the mindset that if I don't get it, I'll take a gap year after uni, I'll paralegal for a year, and I'll try and apply again next time round, because I wasn't in a position to spend, I think, around £17,000 on the bar course out of my own pocket. It just wasn't feasible. So yeah, without the scholarship, I very much wouldn't have been doing the bar course this year.
And that's really I feel indebted to the inn over that as well. Because without the inn, the door doesn't open, basically. I'm conscious we're 35 minutes in, and promise I won't keep you past an hour. So I think it'd be really nice to kind of, and I know a lot of people here in the meeting want to have questions about how does a common law pupillage in the terms of the application process differ from other ones, other types of pupillages. So I thought it might be cool if we could just look at kind of the research process first, and then just get a flavor of what are common types of questions that come up, how can they be traversed, and then what like towards the end when we're getting into the interview stage, and I'm conscious you only attended 5 interviews. Was it 5 interviews?
Right. 2 first round interviews, 1 final round.
2 first round interview. Just generally, and I'll give the example being, if it's a criminal pupillage, there's a kind of way in which they're done. It's either a bail application, it's a plea and mitigation, it's a bad character application. Those kind of styles that people can anticipate. I'm conscious I've got a friend who also did a common law pupillage, who talks about kind of the disclosure questions, the applications that come up in civil that we did on the bar course, and those type of things that come up. And with all of that said, I know I'm jumping around here a little bit. Before we get into, let's say, the applications, right now, while you're on the bar course, is there anything like that you're doing civil-wise that's kind of setting you up, or did you have any connection to the civil work before you were applying? Because you've secured pupillage recently, but you're just doing the bar course now. So I think it's interesting for people listening who maybe not on the bar course yet, and they want to apply for a common law pupillage. Where does that knowledge come in about civil that may come up at interview, or does it not feature as much?
In my experience, it didn't. And even though I wasn't applying for a criminal pupillage, I still had to do a plea and mitigation in my final round interview. I don't know whether that's how a lot of common law pupillages interview, or whether that was sort of unique to Park Square. But I know sort of they had a specialist family pupillage, and then they had a common law one. So I think I got the choice, actually. They asked me whether I wanted to do a family advocacy scenario, or whether I wanted to do the criminal one, which was the plea and mitigation. And I got that 3 days before the interview, I think, to prepare beforehand. So again, that wasn't sort of arrive on the spot given the papers. I could prepare that in advance. But bar course wise, and one thing that I was sort of really apprehensive about was the ethics questions, because I knew that Park Square had a section of their final round interview that was based purely on ethical scenarios. And obviously I know that ethics is a big topic on the bar course that you're examined on. And I was sort of aware of the core duties, but I'd never been properly taught those. So that was definitely something I was conscious of. But I think you just have to be honest. Like, they knew from my application that I was a 3rd year law student who I hadn't even graduated at the time of my interview. So I hadn't even got a law degree under my belt, and certainly hadn't started the bar course or had any of that knowledge. So when it came to the ethics thing, I was just honest and said, you know, I'm yet to start the bar course. I haven't actually studied ethics, but from my gut instinct and my research, this is the approach I would take. So yeah, I think it's sort of just being honest and knowing that they don't expect the final product when they're interviewing. They look more for your potential. So they don't expect the perfect candidate. I don't know if you've found the same, but I feel like they're happy for you to make mistakes if they can sort of see if there's an explanation for it, if that makes sense.
Definitely. I think especially with ethics, they're not looking for the shiny answer always, especially they'll take into account where you're at. But I think they are hoping to see that your instincts are right. Or your judgment is right. And I think it's one of those things that you can develop by exposing yourself, not necessarily to You don't need to go onto the bar course and do the ethics exam, but even just having a glance, like you said, at the 10 core duties, and then just looking at some basic questions about how they actually are applied, I think could go a very long way in helping you navigate, not all, but giving you just some instinct of how to navigate them.
And I feel like lots of student forums, like the Student Room and ones like that, they'll have sort of some of the generic questions that come up a lot, for example, and I got asked this as well, basically along the lines of, what do you do if you're representing somebody and they tell you that they're guilty? And obviously the answer is that you can't represent them after that, because you're not allowed to mislead the court. But I think that is the answer that I gave at the time, probably not as polished as that, because I wasn't entirely sure what the duties were at the time, because I hadn't been taught it. But that sort of questions like that are common and do come up. So sort of knowing, like having a little bit of a rehearsed answer to questions like that is always helpful. And specifically civil knowledge wise, I didn't get asked anything about like the civil procedure rules or the like, but I think
were you prepared if you were going to be asked?
Not really about the civil procedure rules. No, I don't even know if I knew what the white book was at that point, I can't lie. But a lot of civil's based on tort and contract. So I did get asked a sort of personal injury question about a woman slipping on grease and falling into an empty swimming pool or something like that. And I had to, like, they asked me what I would say to her in a conference. So obviously that was more about negligence of the swimming pool. So they wanted me to talk about the elements of a claim in negligence and evidence and things like that. I suppose actually evidence is something that would help, that I now know about this from studying on the bar course. I know much more about evidence and how that sort of works, but I think I just had to retrieve my knowledge from my first year uni modules, tort and contract, and sort of those.
Touching briefly on evidence, when you say how it works, are you meaning what evidence you may need to acquire to facilitate a potential claim? Or
as in like witness statements, CCTV, the sort of the claimant's own witness statement, and then if there were any witnesses who saw the accident occur, getting evidence from them as well.
Through the lens of trying to see if there's, from the commercial side or a civil side, just seeing if there's enough
successful claim, I guess. So civil wise, but that was the only real sort of civil based question that I was given, despite it being a common law pupillage. The rest was quite criminal, especially like the plea and mitigation and things like that.
When you were doing the application, so just touching briefly on research, is because what I'm a believer in is that regardless of what type of pupillage that you do, there is a process to applying for pupillage, irrespective of the technical part of it. Like you've just mentioned with civil, contract, tort, those principles are an aspect to the relevant type of pupillage that you're applying to, but the overall research, drafting, interview, that is a technique, that's a skill. So when it comes to research, was there anything that you were doing to prepare for the questions that you were seeing on the applications that you sent out? So what was there any specific type of common law or civil type of questions that would have a habit of coming up?
I think just the generic questions of why do you want to be a barrister and what area of law do you want to specialise in? I mean, those two are pretty much guaranteed to come up on every application. So having an absolutely polished answer for both of those was sort of a good starting point for me. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them seem to want evidence of the same skill. So communication came up a lot, interpersonal skills, they were probably the main two. And they were wanting examples of, show a time when you've demonstrated good communication skills or good interpersonal skills. So I sort of made a mind map with all of my experiences and all of the skills that applications were wanting or that I knew were relevant to a career at the bar. And I was sort of like joining links between them all. So I sort of had in my head, as soon as they said communication, I knew, right, on my CV, I've got X, Y, and Z, and these were all ways when I can demonstrate that I've got good communication skills. So I think it's about drawing links between your experiences and the skills that they're looking for. But I think application wise, it's just like not being afraid to ask for help. Like I got so many people to read over my applications. I drafted them over and over again. And even mock interviews as well. I did multiple mock interviews, which really helped.
Where did you do those?
So with my careers advisor at uni.
Is that the University of Leeds?
Yeah, the University. Yeah. Our careers advisor. Also, I think BPP offered, they had like an online pupilage application sort of workshop, and then at the end there was the opportunity where they would pair you up with a barrister from a local chambers, and the barrister would give you a mock interview. So I got paired up with a barrister that way, and she gave me a mock interview as well. And there was another girl who I sort of knew through going to different events, who had just secured pupilage the year before at one of the sets that I was applying to as well. So she gave me a mock interview as well. So I think it's just using as many of your people from your network as you can. But even if you don't sort of have anyone law-based, just getting like a family friend or someone like that to give you a mock interview is so useful.
100%, because the mock, like I feel like no one can give you, and it comes down to anecdotal experience really, but the mocks, when I had a mock with a barrister, the first time I had a mock with a barrister, and I'd only had a previous mock with a career advisor, they were just two completely different experiences. The feedback was completely different, and it makes logical sense. He's or she is going to be able to see things with a certain type of eye that someone who isn't in the profession can't see, or someone who hasn't been through the application process doesn't understand. So I think it's nice to kind of, like you said, if you can get both, amazing. I know it's very hard for some people, but I think it's also encouraging to hear that you are equally a first generation lawyer with no contacts, and that it can be done. And you know, you've got to be a bit cheeky. You've got to push it out there and put the offers out there and try and just get some contacts basically under the belt.
And even like friends or housemates, you know, if you don't have anyone in the profession to look over your application, even just a friend who can check for grammatical errors and things like that, or just say, you know, well, maybe it would work better if you did this instead, or, you know, and sometimes they know you better than you know yourself, so they might remember, oh, you did this in first year, why don't you put that on? Or you did this, that demonstrates leadership, why don't you put that on? And just things like that can help as well.
So I've got some final questions for you. The first one is, I'm not going to read them off a list, but if you were just giving me a knee-jerk reaction now, what would you say was unique about your application? What was unique about you? The one thing that why you were different from other people on your application? Did it, like, potentially something that stood out, something that came up time and time again?
One quite unique thing that I put on my application that I got asked about in every interview was about the London Marathon. So in my second year of uni, 2022, I ran the London Marathon, and I put that on my on all my applications, and I always got asked about it time and time again. And I think, one, it sets you aside because they probably didn't have many applicants that year who had ran a marathon. And two, I found unique ways to link it to life at the bar, like resilience, time management skills, balancing training alongside my studies and part-time work. And I think it's just about finding the links between, like I said earlier, the links between your experiences and the skills, and not necessarily just academic stuff. Like I think another thing that was unique about the marathon is that it had nothing to do with law, and it showed that I sort of had a bit of a personality outside of law as well, and that I was just a normal, whole-rounded person. I wasn't just obsessed with law and only law.
Yeah.
So I think they're looking for like the whole rounded applicant. So, you know, I often say to people, like, I've looked over a few applications for people, especially scholarships for the Inns of Court, and they'll tell me that they're like the captain of their hockey team on the uni society. I'm like, why haven't you put that in your application? You can talk about that so much, the leadership skills, organisation, so much more, teamwork. And they say, oh, it's not relevant to law, so I didn't think I should put it in. But I would always advise to put in anything and everything like that, because that's the thing that they'll remember you for. Pretty much all the applicants are going to have at least a 2-1 law degree. That's a given. And pretty much everyone's going to have done a few mini-pupilages, but not everyone's going to have run a marathon or be the captain of the hockey team. And I think that's what they remember about you.
Definitely. I think it's not every day that you meet someone who's running a marathon or someone who's on a hockey team. I think people feel, or a captain of a team, people sometimes they want to fit into a certain mold. But
Exactly,
I think it's nice to kind of,
show off your personality, and
we'll get the confidence to show that personality off, and that's you know, will come like through time and through kind of just putting it out there slowly. I think some people are more scared of the rejection of being different, but actually, like you said, it can add a lot of value to their application. Was there a time you recall being stumped at interview?
Yeah, so I was asked about the Rwanda Bill in my first round interview for Park Square. And I knew what it was briefly, and from the news I kind of had a rough idea, but I didn't feel comfortable enough that I knew enough about it to give an answer to the standard that they were looking for. And I remember it was an online interview, and I sort of had a paper and pen in front of me, and I was writing notes, and I was just writing Rwanda Bill over and over again because I had no idea where I was going to go with this answer. And I'd used all the initial tricks of, oh, please could you like rephrase the question or repeat the question to buy myself a little bit more time. And even after they had repeated it, I still thought, oh God, I just don't have a clue. So I just sort of winged it a little bit. It was probably an awful answer, and I thought that had cost me the interview. Actually, I was really surprised when I found out that I had got a second round, because I thought that question alone had been a total write-off. But I think know your current affairs, because I've heard that it comes up a lot. I know at the time of first round interviews last year, the sort of Kate Middleton privacy case was a big thing. I know a lot of people got asked about that in pupillage interviews as well. So I think in the weeks leading up to your interview, read the news every day, have arguments for and against, or drawbacks and benefits of both sides of the argument, and know your current affairs like the back of your hand, because it does come up, and I learned the hard way.
They probably like the fighter spirit. They probably knew you didn't know, but you were still trying to fight on. Just
remember, like, because as well, this was in my third year of uni, and it was sort of linked to constitutional public law, which I hadn't done since first year of uni. So I was desperately trying to like pull out all this knowledge that I had from my first year about constitutional law, and I sort of just rambled on about that, giving the pros and cons of parliamentary sovereignty and who should pass laws and things like that. But yeah, it definitely wasn't a great answer, and I am very surprised that I made it through to the second round after that. But I guess that's another thing. Don't think that that's the be all and end all if you don't know the answer to one question.
What would you say from when you started from the beginning of uni to when you got pupillage? What changed? Was it the quality of your applications? Was it your confidence going to these interviews? Like what's the biggest thing that's changed about you as a candidate? Can you put it down to one thing, or is it a group of things?
Yeah, I would say it's a combination of a lot of things. I couldn't pinpoint one thing in particular, but I think just generally having better awareness of the profession and what it actually entails. And I feel like sort of I had enough experience. I was volunteering for the witness service in Leeds Magistrate Court once a week. And I think that helped a lot, actually, because it was great to talk about in interviews and it looked great on applications, but as well, it actually gave me the insight of what a day in court entails and what life as a barrister actually is. So I think it's actually knowing, a lot of people think they know or say they know what a barrister actually does, but until you've experienced it firsthand, I don't think people quite appreciate what it is. So I think actually going into interviews, knowing what a barrister exactly is and does and should do helped me a lot, because in first year or even before uni, I knew that I wanted to be a barrister, but I didn't 100% know what the job entailed. And I think as my research went on and as I learnt more and had more experience throughout my uni degree, by the end I really knew exactly what a barrister was and also why I wanted to do that.
You're starting next year in September. From now till like then, do you need to do any preparation leading up, or is it a case of you're focusing on the bar course? Once that's done, you're going to take a break and then relax? Or is there anything, any suggestions or advice you've been given leading up to your common law pupillage that you will be doing to put yourself in the best place to hit the ground running?
Not particularly at the minute. I haven't really been told to do anything in specific to prepare. I haven't been told who my supervisor is yet or anything like that, or any sort of final details even. But I think at the minute the priority is just passing the bar course, focusing all my time and energy on that at the minute, and getting through that. But that finishes in April, at the end of April. Those are my final bar course exams. So then hopefully just have a nice restful summer, probably do as much traveling as I can, catching up with friends and family before
All the chaos.
Yeah,
the chaos
exactly.
begins.
Resting up, really getting a lot of sleep in.
Shall we shall we open the floor for the remaining minutes to see if we have any questions? I know someone's just put a message in. Oh, that's nice. No, I'm glad the videos help. And Charlie, there's a shout out to you as well there. Thank you very much for that. It's very kind. Does anyone have any questions for Millie while we have her? I would really advise, for the people that are still here, she's here for you. I'm a criminal barrister, so you're all here for common law pupilages. There's not much that I can offer you that she will be able to. So I really do urge you all, if you have any questions, just throw them in the chat, ask her while she's still here. And if there are any criminal questions, as always, I'm at your beck and call. So we've got one from Jordan, which is, what has been the most difficult module of the bar course for you? Also, your thoughts on part-time study.
Ooh, so I'm studying at BPP. So we do all of the civil modules up until Christmas, do our exams just before Christmas. Mine start next week, actually. And then we're done with civil. And then after Christmas, we move on to criminal. I know some other providers do it differently. They study civil and criminal alongside each other. So I've actually haven't done any criminal content yet at all. We've only done civil. So my modules this term have been civil litigation, submission advocacy, and drafting. And I really enjoy civil, but I do think it's the hardest. The exams are just renowned for being really difficult. They're multi-choice, but a lot of them are single best answer. So multiple of the answers will be right, but one is more right than the others. And those ones are tricky. So I've definitely found that the hardest, but I wouldn't necessarily say that correlates to me enjoying it the least. It's just been sort of the most demanding. But submission advocacy has been really fun. We have really small groups, so there's only 3 of us in my group. So I really enjoy those sessions. I think it's really fun. We have a mock courtroom, and each week you prepare a different application. So either like an interim payment or an interim injunction, things like civil applications, and you deliver it in front of the class. So I really enjoy that. Yeah, so I don't know what's my favourite so far, because I've only really seen the civil side of it, but I am intrigued to see how I'll find criminal after Christmas, because I'm definitely prefer civil to criminal. So it'll be interesting to see how I find it after Christmas.
So there's an interesting one from Ben here, and I think maybe we can share the response together. And I'll read the question out, and then I'll read his response out, and then I'll offer some feedback of my own, and then I'll pass over to the common law oracle that we have here with us today. So the question is, we're going to be asked in applications, why do you want a common law pupillage? My answer will be, first, I want to be busy. Second, I think a broad practice will make me a better barrister, at least. And third, initially, I don't know what practice areas I don't like, so I want to try everything. The question is, can you think of some other compelling reasons that pupillage committees are going to love? So do you want to take the first swing, or should I?
Yeah, I'll give it a go. I mean, it's hard because I was never actually asked that on any application form. How I found the question to be phrased was, what area of law in particular are you interested in? And that's a really difficult question to answer if you genuinely don't know. And if you don't know, I'd say just try and apply to as many mini pupilages in different areas to narrow it down a little bit. That's what helped me. It sort of helped me rule out criminal and commercial, and then that sort of only left civil and chancery. I did a bit of chancery work in like wills and trusts and probate, and that wasn't really for me either. And just from my uni modules in my degree as well, like I enjoyed the civil modules way more than the others, so that helped me narrow it down as well. But yeah, that is a really hard question to answer if you genuinely don't know the answer. But I think as well, they might ask you why that set. So rather than why a common law pupillage, it might be why that set, and then you can sort of intertwine that and say, I really like the fact that your set offers a common law pupillage because the flexibility really appeals to me for these reasons, and then state what you've said, that you want to be busy, you want a broad practice, you know, you want to be kept on your toes, that kind of thing. But yeah, I would say that is a difficult question if you genuinely don't know what area of law you want to specialise in.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the feedback I will comment on, the feedback I'll give, and the specifics of the answer that I'll comment on is going back to when we spoke about there is a process, there's a technique and a skill to applying for pupillage, irrespective of the area. Those principles apply here. So if I just take a look at this answer, the first one is, I want to be busy. Believe me, as a barrister, whatever area you do, you will be very busy. So they will look at that and say that has no relevance to the question, because the question is, why do you want a common law pupillage? So the first response is problematic. I think a broad practice will make me a better barrister. Now, there is some truth to that, and there's some value in that. I think it's better particularized by picking areas within this particular set that you're applying to. Let's say they do family and crime, and saying what it is about. Maybe they do 6 areas. What is it about 2 of those areas that you find interesting, which is why you want to keep your options open, because you want to explore other areas? I don't see an issue with that. What I do say, though, normally is that candidates need to separate out a pupillage application from a mini pupillage application. By that, it is, in a mini pupillage application, generally speaking, it's okay to say, I'm interested, I want to explore areas X, Y, and Z. But when it comes to a pupillage application, the allowance for wanting to explore is, the margin for that is less, because they are hoping, well, if you're coming to us and we're going to invest money in you, you should know. Not definitively, but you should be leaning towards having an understanding that of these 3, you want to practice in this field. So I think you've got to be very careful in not giving the impression that you have no idea for a pupillage application. And then the last thing is, yeah, so I think that kind of goes on to your last point about wanting, you don't know, and wanting to try everything. And then I think that also ties back to what Millie's saying in the beginning, which is using mini-pupilages as a tool to get that knowledge, get that experience, and be able to answer a question like that.
Yeah, I think in response to your third point about not knowing what practice areas you like, the panel are probably going to be thinking, why don't you know? They might be thinking that you haven't done enough research or you haven't been proactive enough to gain experience to help you find out what areas. So I'd be very careful, especially with the third point. You don't want it to come across that you've been negligent or sort of lazy and you haven't put in the effort to do your research, because I don't think that would go down very well. And I'm not sure what year of your degree or what stage you're at the moment, but I would say generally by the time you come to applying for pupillage, you should have a pretty good idea, if it's not one specialism, at least, like Taz said, 2 or 3 that you're more interested in than the others.
Any final questions before we wrap up? Going once. Okay. Well, with all of that, with all of that, so one final one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sorry about the part-time.
I missed out. I'm not sure. I didn't really look into it because I had my pupillage offer for 2025, so I only had a year window to do my bar course. So for me, it was kind of full-time and nothing really. I didn't have the part-time option. I think financially it's a great option because it allows you to work alongside the BTC, but especially full-time, the BTC is like a full-time job. So I think it would be really hard to work alongside it and do it full-time. So if you do want to carry on working, then I would advise the part-time version, but I'm doing the full-time version myself, so I'm probably not the most qualified to answer that.
And I'll just build on that by saying my understanding is that part-time is a nice option if people tend to have a better chance at getting higher grades doing part-time because the volume isn't as crazy. So if you're questioning getting the best grades, or you're not someone who deals well with loads of volume, then there's 2 pieces of value to doing it part-time: the monetary side, and then you've also got the breathing room side for the grades. Some of you may have seen me like shaking a little bit in this meeting. It's because the radiator's broke, so I've been trying to not shove it a bit too much, but fortunately the radiator man's coming tomorrow to put it all back into even keel. On that note, I just want to say thank you very much for coming on. Thank you, Charlie, for organising everything. And thank you, Millie. It's been, enlightening to me. I hope people have found it equally as interesting. And yeah, really appreciate having you on, and wish you all the best on the bar course and every success when you start your pupillage next year.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for making organising so easy.
Perfect. Well, see you later, everyone.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.